rum fanatics, and welcome back to another episode of the Rumcast. This is the podcast that talks all things rum related with the people who love and shape it. And tag teaming the hosting duties for today are myself, John Gulla, and with me, Mr. Will Hookinga. We have another great episode lined up for you today with a deep dive into a distillery that I know many of us rum geeks are very excited about, San Juan Artisan Distillers in Puerto Rico, and talking about many subjects related to the distillery and other subjects with their founder, Pepe Álvarez. And Will, I know you have a lot of experience. You've visited this distillery, you've talked with Pepe before, so I know I feel like you have a lot more knowledge than I do, even though I feel like I'm closer and I should have more knowledge. But
you're geographically closer, yeah.
I am.
And I think longtime listeners may recall that in 2021, we did an episode where I had separately done a live stream about Cane Juice Rum distilleries in kind of non-traditional places for that style of rum. Mm-hmm. And Pepe was one of the 3 people interviewed on that live stream. And we ended up taking the recording and adding it to an episode of the Rumcast. So we kind of covered some of the backstory of San Juan Artisan Distillers in that episode. And we kind of speed ran that stuff a little bit. So I'll give a little cursory overview before we go to the interview. But before all that, I had a question for you, which is... Do you know what time of year it is, John?
Is this a trick question?
What? No, it's not a trick question. What time of year is it?
It's spring?
Wrong. It is daiquiri season, John. Daiquiri season.
How could I have not known that?
Well, maybe it's because you live in a place where it's daiquiri season year round.
It's perpetual daiquiri season here, Will. You're absolutely right.
Some people may be screaming at their phone or their car audio system, whatever, right now, saying it's daiquiri season all year long. Will, what are you talking about? No matter where you are in the world, it's a perfect time for a daiquiri. And while I do agree with that, I do tend to gravitate to daiquiris around this time of year where the sun's coming out, it's nice and warm, you want something cold that you can drink quickly, and it gives you all the vibes of summer. And so I've just been kind of making daiquiris left and right, ordering them when I go to bars and things like that. And I was at Chopper recently, my watering hole of choice in Nashville when I'm drinking rum cocktails. And I wanted a daiquiri, but I was thinking to myself, I need to do something fun. Like what's a daiquiri I could do with a rum I've never had in a daiquiri before.
Okay.
With
Get
one
adventurous.
I wouldn't something adventurous, something I wouldn't typically think as my first option, even though this naturally does go quite well with a daiquiri. And actually, just having set up that scenario, what direction do you think I took things in? I'll give you some hints. So I went unaged, I went non-Caribbean, and I went cane juice.
I was going to say cane juice, so I'm glad
that took that out of your mouth. Okay.
Yeah, that's already where I was going. I did think unaged, so we're aligned there. I didn't expect you were going to say non-Caribbean, but the obvious one that kind of comes to mind for me is Fiji, which I think for me is one that I really enjoy, even lightly aged or unaged Fiji daiquiris, but that's not it. So I'm going to say American rum, okay? It looks you're telling me. No,
I'm not. Oh, okay. I'm just listening, giving you some head tilts and stuff.
Or we did do a deep dive into Scottish rums, so that would make sense,
So no to both of those, but good guesses. I did. So I ended up. It was non-Caribbean. You said Fiji. It is from a country that borders the Pacific Ocean, but it's kind of the other side of the Pacific Ocean. I went with El Amparo rum from Ecuador.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So a pot still aguardiente made from fresh cane juice in Ecuador. This was a release. I think this comes from La Maison and Bellier. I think they're kind of, involved.
Tied in somehow.
Yeah. I always awkwardly stumble through the relationship La Maison and Bellier has with producers, but they're involved in some way. Anyway,
puppeteers.
This is not puppeteers. I wouldn't say that. I think they would harshly object to that characterization.
They're in the shadows. No, they're really not. I'm totally mischaracterizing that. Yeah.
They're all about spotlighting the producer and letting the producer do their thing. So anyway, this is a cane juice rum, pot still, bottled at still strength, I believe, unaged. I think most the bottles that I've seen say 57.5% ABV. And generally, high ABV rums like that, I'm a little skittish to put into daiquiris when I'm at home, just because
Really?
I'm convinced I'm gonna fuck it up in some way. You know, I'm gonna get I'm gonna put
Just
I'm
the
gonna get the
balance, you
ratio.
mean?
The balance. I'm
Yeah.
gonna mess up the balance because I when I'm drinking a daiquiri, I want a balanced drink. I don't want to take a sip and be like, whoa, man, that's strong.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, every now and then maybe, but most of the time I want something refreshing and that sort of thing. So it's hard for me to manage those like beastlier rums. So asking a skilled professional from the bar world to do it is, I feel like, a perfect opportunity for that. So anyway, I had tried El Amparo neat. I don't have a bottle, but I'd sampled it and really enjoyed it. But I had no idea what it was going to be like in a daiquiri, because I've found that a lot of these Latin American cane juice rums, they work really well in daiquiris, but they could like go in unpredictable directions, kind of, because they have kind of adventurous flavor profiles a lot of the time. And first of all, John, I was not disappointed by this daiquiri.
Okay.
The fine folks at Chopper did an amazing job balancing it out. I don't know what ratios they used and everything, but I wouldn't have known it was such a high proof rum if I hadn't had known that already, if you get what I'm saying. Yeah. So perfectly balanced. But what I was really struck about this, and this may be where you start to say to yourself, that sounds like something I'm never going to order. But I was amazed. It was the most floral tasting daiquiri.
You know me already well enough to know.
I know you, yeah. It was the most floral tasting daiquiri I've ever had, which was so surprising to me because, again, like I just had a sample of El Amparo, so I didn't do a super, detailed analysis of it or anything. I didn't have multiple tastings, but I don't remember thinking of it as an especially floral tasting rum, but it just exploded out of the glass as floral. And it was just a reminder that, like, I think a lot of times when I'm at a bar, especially if I'm going there for the first time, which maybe that's why I did this, because I've been to Chopper many times, but I always either want to try something unique they have on the menu. So, something from their, as opposed to like a Mai Tai. I mean, getting a Mai Tai can be fun, but I often gravitate towards stuff that seems more original, as opposed to just their spin on a classic, or just going with the classic daiquiri and just seeing, like, can you make a good daiquiri? I think what I need to add to my list is the unconventional fun daiquiri is what I will describe that as. That was actually literally what they called it when it was brought to me. They said, did someone order a fun daiquiri? And I was like, I think that's me. So anyway, it's daiquiri season. Get out there, try some new things, go to your local bar professionals and pick a rum from the back bar that you've never thrown in a daiquiri and see what comes out the other end.
That's interesting that you mentioned that, because I'm hesitant to order a daiquiri at a bar, not because I think it's going to not be good. It's more because that's like one of the few drinks that I can make reliably at home and not fail. Whereas, like you said, a Mai Tai or some other those drinks that I'm just not really good at making. So I feel like there's added value there by me ordering it there and drinking it there. But that said, to your point, usually it's just, well, give me a daiquiri from your menu, right? I don't often think about like, hey, I get to pick the rum.
Right.
There are a few places here in Miami you can do that with, many you can't. But so that's a good way to think about it. There's actually a guy on Florida Rum Society, gosh, and I wish I had his name right now to give him credit, but all he does is post daiquiris from every single bar he goes to in Florida.
Nice.
So that's like his mission in life,
right?
Is he goes to a bar, he orders a daiquiri, and that is the standard by which he judges this bar. Yeah. And so I find that interesting that from that perspective as well, that you can do that with a daiquiri. I think it is the drink kind of to do that way. So, but you lost me at, like you said, at floral. Yeah, I just
maybe
floral, like, doesn't work for me. Yeah.
Maybe the El Amparo daiquiri is not the daiquiri for you, but I want you to go out there and, go to Exotico or somewhere like that and find the daiquiri for you. So
it was closed.
Oh, it's closed?
Yeah.
It's gone?
You didn't hear? I didn't tell you this?
No.
Oh, newsflash. Yeah, Exotico is, so here's my understanding of it, and somebody write in and correct me on this, but it's like temporarily shut down to, like, what they said was like to rebrand it or something.
Okay.
So you can't go there right now. The speakeasy that's attached to it is still open. So the Kona room is still open, and there's plenty of rum and drinks to be had there. I don't know what the hours are. I don't think it's the same as Asadico, but my understanding is that Daniela Della Pola, the owner of Asadico, that he's off right now in other areas of the world. He's doing a bunch of things there, and that there's some work going on in Asadico to rebrand the whole thing and refresh it, maybe, I guess you would say. He might argue and say, no, it's not a rebranding, it's more of a refreshing, and get back to business. So I don't know what the update is on that, but yeah, I do know that right now Asadico is ixnay on the Asadico,
It's a tough word to translate into Pig Latin, just Latin, on the fly. Yeah. Anyway, this is not a revolutionary suggestion by any means. I think this is a very common thing that rum enthusiasts do when they go to bars, but something that I just hadn't thought to do in a while. So I would encourage everyone out there, as we open daiquiri season here in the Northern Hemisphere, most parts of it anyway, go out there and order a fun daiquiri. But John, in the meantime, we have a really interesting interview to get to. And I did want to kind of quickly give kind of a little bit of backstory on San Juan Artisan Distillers. As you said, I visited there very beginning of 2020. I've mentioned it on the podcast before. Only fresh cane juice rum distillery that I'm aware of in Puerto Rico. The first one in probably, I don't know, a century or so. I'm sure at some point in history, someone in Puerto Rico was distilling cane juice rum. So really, kind of the first modern distillery doing that, and doing it at a really cool level. Like, it's an impressive facility. We've mentioned on the show before, they have the French cognac style pot stills that were used at Tin Cane Distillery in Trinidad before it closed. Pepe went and purchased those stills, and that's what they use to make their cane juice rum. They grow sugarcane right behind the distillery. They have some planted elsewhere as well, and Pepe talks about they're kind of moving some of that around right now due to some weather reasons and stuff that he'll get into. But basically, he had been working on this since, I think, 2011, 2012, sometime in there. I know he mentions the date in the episode. Planting sugarcane, getting a hold of the facility, building it out, all that stuff. They were getting ready to open in 2017. Hurricane Maria comes through, devastates the island of Puerto Rico, destroys tons of stuff, including their sugarcane fields, damages a lot of the distillery. It didn't if I'm remembering correctly, I don't think it completely destroyed equipment or anything like that, but it, repairs and stuff were, it was bad. So that was kind of like they were just getting ready to open and their sugarcane got destroyed. So the cane juice rum idea it was going to take time to build that back up. So in the meantime, while they're replanting, rebuilding and everything, Pepe started importing some unaged rum from the Dominican Republic and adding various kinds of local fruits to it, it was basically like they're like a commercialized version of a common way that people enjoy Pitoro or Roncaña, which is sort of unaged moonshine rum in Puerto Rico. It's kind of a tradition. Yeah. Well, higher ABV, like their more commercial version was lower ABV.
Right.
But, people add fruits and spices and things, which is, a very common tradition you see throughout the Caribbean and expressing itself in different ways. So they launched this brand called Tres Clavos while they worked on replanting the sugarcane and everything. In 2020, that's when they were finally able to start bottling and selling their fresh cane juice rum, which is bottled under the brand Ron Pepon. Pepon means Big Pepe, which is Pepe's father. So anyway, kind of a family homage there. They get that out in 2020. The pandemic happens. Naturally, that's a whole different kind of setback. But we talked to Pepe on the podcast, or I should say I did in the recording in 2021. So they'd really only had like a year to kind of get Ron Pepon off the ground at that point. And this was still, prime COVID era, so to speak. So it was tough for them to do a lot of the stuff that they wanted to with it. So 3 years have passed. We wanted to kind of catch up on everything that's happened since then. And another priority I think we wanted to explore in the interview, something that I'd noticed is on top of San Juan Artisan Distillers, there are several other interesting newer craft, quote unquote, rum distilleries in Puerto Rico that have popped up over the last decade or so. And I got to see a number of those during that trip. And I've been kind of surprised at how little I feel like I hear about a lot of those just in the rum enthusiast sphere since then. And especially considering Puerto Rico has kind of a government entity to promote the rum industry in Puerto Rico. The Rums of Puerto Rico program, like that's what they do. They promote the Puerto Rican rum industry. But I feel like I haven't heard very much about these, small, interesting distilleries. It's usually the bigger distilleries, the Bacardis, the Distillería Serralles that makes Don Q. Mm-hmm. And so that was something we talked about as well, just kind of like what that landscape looks like for them, what it's like to be a small Puerto Rican rum distillery, and how much of the benefit do they see from that. So the conversation went a lot of really interesting directions, and Pepe is always an interesting guy to talk to. So I'm excited for people to hear this one.
Yeah, and you mentioned it's an interesting rum. I've had the opportunity to try this one a few times at some rum shows here, even though you cannot find it in the U.S. to my knowledge, right? It's still only in Puerto Rico at the moment. And
yeah, well, and he's looking for distribution. They're looking for the right partner, which is something he talks about as well.
And, every so often we bring to the show someone like this who is doing something that we highlight as a really fine example of rum making, and that we want to push forward and say, hey, this is something that we want to see more of. And in just a quick tidbit on what you said in terms of like, he's in this island that he's kind of going against the grain, as are some other craft distillers, doing a cane juice rum in Puerto Rico, doing it in pot still. And we talk about that in the interview, but that it's not just interesting, right? This is actually incredibly good rum.
Yeah, it's very good.
Like, oh, interesting, you're doing something different. No, he's really making excellent rum, and that we want to highlight that it's very good and very different. Yeah.
It's something I think we've mentioned in the past, and also Frank Ward talked about working with Pepe. Frank Ward of previous part of the ownership of Mount Gay, and a distiller in his own right behind the Mount Gilboa brand, the Last Ward rums, released by Velier and stuff. Pepe hired him as a consultant when he was sort of figuring out designing the distillery, formulating the rum recipe and stuff. He also brought in Luis Planas, who was a veteran of Bacardi. So he brought in people who really know what they're doing. This wasn't someone just kind of experimenting and figuring things out on the fly, which, plenty of distilleries go that route. And sometimes you get really great results from that too. So, not looking down on that at all. But anyway, they're serious about rum, and that's always great to see. So yeah, I'm excited for people to hear the interview, and we'll take a quick break and then go right over. Pepe, I want to, we talked to you on the podcast. It was actually, I was looking back this morning, it was early 2021. I think when was the first bottle of Ron Pepon available for sale?
We started our project. I created the corporation in 2011.
Right. But like the first time people could buy your cane juice rum product, when was that?
Yeah, that was 2020. And so we started harvesting our sugarcane and started mainly fermenting, bottling our Ron Pepon and selling in 2020.
Yeah. So you had everything set to go. You have Hurricane Maria. You build everything back up, 2020. Then you have the pandemic. So the timing has just been like crazy. But we talked to you in 2021. So you'd had a year, I think, to kind of get Ron Pepon off the ground, get some bottles out there. It's 2024 now. I know you've just gotten back from several trips traveling around the world. What have kind of the last 3 years been like? What's changed for you over that time? What are kind of your priorities with Ron Pepon right now? Bring us up to date.
Well, after, as you well said, the last 5 or 6 years have been like the 7 plagues of Egypt over Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
And I mean, we were just finishing our beautiful project, and everything was pristine and immaculate, ready to inaugurate in 2017. And we got smacked by the hurricane before opening the door. That was a big setback, not only economically, but emotionally. It was really tough on everybody.
Yeah.
I couldn't be interviewed because they would ask me how agriculture was doing in Puerto Rico, and I would break up in tears, and I couldn't talk. Not only because of me, because I saw all the damage it did to all the Puerto Rican agricultural initiatives throughout the island. I've been in agriculture all my life because I started my landscaping business when I was 17 years old. And I grew my plants and I had farms, and I've always been involved in agriculture, and I've been a bona fide agricultural entity since I was 18 years old. So I know, and I know very well all the efforts and the work. And, Puerto Rican farmers are always struggling up against, there are so many odds against them. And to see their efforts destroyed, it was simply disheartening.
Yeah.
We got hit by Maria. Then we got hit by Hurricane Fiona that flooded. We had 100 acres of sugarcane that we had planted through sweat and effort and money and a lot of work. We got hit by those two hurricanes. Then after the hurricanes came the pandemic. They told us we couldn't work the fields. We couldn't do anything. So that effort of restoring everything was held back, and we got held back by that. And then after that, something clicked in people's mentality that, we had 15 agricultural employees when we started developing the project. And it was like this dynamic, happy, everybody wanted to be part of it and help. And right now we have 4 agro employees, down from 15. And there's no way we can recruit any kind of money to get these agro hands to work. Mm-hmm. So we haven't been able to restore the large parcel, the 50-acre parcel that we had, because I figured out that it didn't make any sense to restore that parcel because it's bordered by a river, which is very beneficial because it's getting impacted. That parcel is like a peninsula, and it's impacted by the river that runs around it. So you have natural water hitting the sugarcane. The sugarcane would grow like weed. But every time you had a storm or anything, it would be completely like a 15-foot wave breaking over the sugarcane, and everything get destroyed. So I recently returned those 50 acres to the Department of the Land Authority of Puerto Rico, who leases the land to us. And I was able to identify a 60-acre farm. It's about half a kilometer down the street from our distillery. And my latest and probably my last ditch into coming back to the original amount of sugarcane that we used to produce is to plant that 60 acres. So that's my pet project right now. I'm very much involved in leading that. I'm securing the land lease for that, and I'm securing different things that we have to do there and the different programs that we can participate and structuring financing to develop that. But if we manage to do that, we're going to have to evolve in a almost 95% automated process. Wow. We can't depend like we did when we had the 15 guys that we would plant the sugarcane, we would cut the sugarcane. It was like an army of guys, and we, at that moment, we couldn't afford buying a $500,000 sugarcane harvester, which is what they cost. And aside from that, there's other equipment that you need. So right now, our latest effort will be to plant those 60 acres to get a automated cutting sugarcane machine and tractors where the sugarcane will be thrown into these wagons. We're going to be amending our sugarcane mill that will have like an automated table that the sugarcane wagons, they raise and they dump the sugarcane. So it's all automated. It goes into the conveyor and then it goes into the mills. So we have a project also ahead of us that we need to amend and put up to date and give the capacity of the sugarcane mill to do this. So we continue with our intention of growing and restoring our original reason of existing, which was creating the first Agricola style rum ever made in Puerto Rico. No one else, and distilled in French cognac pot stills. I think we're the only ones in the world doing this, or maybe there might be some guy I think there's a guy in Guadalupe that has the exact same model of me, not Guadalupe, Marigalan, which is even more remote.
Yeah.
So, we're going forward, and it's a project we love, and that's what we're not, we'll keep on fighting and try to finish that project as soon as possible so we can increase.
It sounds like a lot of transition. Yeah.
yeah, you need to evolve. You need to evolve.
Mhm.
It's been a tough 10 years. And what we're doing right now, what we've been doing for a while, is getting very good high grade molasses. And when the distillery is in the downtime because we don't have sugarcane on hand to process or and produce our Agricola rum, we've been distilling from high test molasses, very clean, super high quality molasses, and we have quite a bit of molasses rum aged in barrels, which has come incredibly good. And we're launching it at 4 or 5 years of aging, and we don't even have a name for it. We're right at the moment we're designing the labels, choosing the bottle, and we're going to be launching that soon. And we plan to continue doing that because we don't want the distillery to sit idle. If every other year a hurricane comes by and destroys the sugarcane or knocks us off our socks, we're able to do something else. But rompepon, everything that goes into rompepon, a rompepon bottle, will always be 100% Agricola rum. It will not have a quarter of an ounce. It won't have anything that will have to do with,
100%.
yeah, 100% rum made. Yesterday, we were analyzing our cost of producing a bottle of Agricola rum. We're looking at around $12 a liter, a liter.
Okay.
That is outrageous. I mean, it's super expensive. We're selling it wholesale in the market for around $28. My production cost is around $12.50. When you add the overhead of the structure, the carrying cost of the distillery, which is quite big, and you factor in, you're looking at my final cost is probably, I don't know, $18 a bottle finished, and we're selling it for 28, and then you have to give sales to commission for the cost of sales and delivery and distribution and the commissions that everybody gets. So
And
Jose was
that's the unaged product, right?
that's the unaged product. Yeah, that's
Right.
not even placed in a bottle. So Jose was telling me that I think we need to, hike this price because we're basically almost breaking even doing this. But to me, it's something symbolical, even if I don't make money out of the product. It's extremely symbolical and important for me that we continue to persevere and that we are able to develop into a size, because what we need, we will be able to lower our costs if we augment volume. And that is why we're going ahead with planting. This will be honestly my last ditch effort. I'm 66 years old right now, so this is going to take a couple of years to do, and I'm going to go in there and do it. And I just hope that we'll be able to come through with this plan.
Yeah, no, it's we always try to, I guess when we talk to producers who are working with sugarcane and fresh sugarcane juice and doing the farming component and everything, we always hope it comes through to people how much more work that can take. And that's not to diminish molasses rums, because molasses rums can be fabulous, and obviously they take a lot of work and effort too to make something good there. And I mean, you were just praising the quality of the molasses product that you guys are making too. But yeah, so much work goes into it, and especially as you try to grow and expand and everything. But we've seen you at more and more rum shows in the U.S. More and more people have gotten to actually try rompepon. We've heard great feedback about it on the show. I know we've told you that we're fans of it. And I know one other thing you've been working on is just how to get it to more places beyond Puerto Rico. What has that challenge? Because that's a whole other type of challenge, right? Like the rum business is essentially challenges on challenges and on challenges. You have making it, and there's all the challenges that go in there, but also getting it to people. What has that process been like for you as you've gone out there as kind of the salesman trying to get it into more markets and things like that?
Yeah, I've been traveling for the last 5 years. I've been to over 20 expos throughout the U.S. We just went to the largest spirits trade show in the USA, which is a WWSI event that was just held in Las Vegas. It's strictly and wine, but mostly spirits. And we've been offering our product, which has definitely an important space, and it's a niche product. And we've had dozens of distributors try them. We've been able to, through this last show, there's a couple of parties that are seriously interested. We're talking to a group from Washington. We're talking to a group from New York. We're talking to a group from Texas. Because the U.S. is so big.
Right. There's so many different markets you can enter, and they all have different rules, different nuances and things.
Yeah, and not everybody has the reach to reach all the, all the 50 states. So what a lot of distilleries do is they select different distributors for different areas like the Southwest, Northeast, Southeast, and so forth. So we're working hard on that, but we haven't been able to secure a solid distributor. Agricola Rum is an acquired taste. When you try a very light white rum distilled in a column that has been distilled at 170 from 170 to 189 proofs. There's distilleries that distill at 189 proof. 190 is considered a neutral spirit. It's a vodka. And there's distilleries that distill all the way up to 189. They're just 0.5% away from being vodka. So when you try our product, it's like a syrup of sugarcane with alcohol in it. It's an acquired taste, and I do believe and I feel that we have more people liking agricole style rum because it's so different and it's so wholesome and it's so beautiful and it makes such great cocktails to drink straight. But yeah,
I will say this real quick, just to interrupt that, having had a chance to try yours and now, other cane juice rums from around the world, I want to give credit where I think it's due, which is that I believe that Rum Pepon, the white rum, is probably one of, if not the most approachable cane juice rum that I can think of. So I think that that's worth mentioning because, to your point, there is an acquired taste for a lot of cane juice rum for people that are coming from molasses spirits and just learning and getting into this and going, whoa, that's very different. That said, I do think that there's some credit there to you all for doing what you're doing and making it very approachable in its nature.
Yeah, that is definitely our goal. But this is the distillery business is a very tough business, as you must have heard from many distillers. And it takes a lot of love and passion and desire to make this happen. But we're growing a little bit every year, and we just need to find the right people in the States to help us distribute the product. We're still available. We're in negotiations with a few companies, but we want to be placed in the right hands. We don't want to hook up with the first one that comes by. So we get requests from people all the time, but then, it's these shady proposals and like uncompleted information that we get from them. And so, we want to be with solid people of the industry and the business. So hopefully we'll have that happen. Jose, my son, just went to the American Craft Convention.
In the ACSA convention, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a month after I went to Las Vegas. I just went to the Alimentaria Fair in Barcelona, and from there to Madrid, and I met with 5 or 6 distributors there. And we're also looking at the huge potential that the European market has. Puerto Rico has kind of slept in its laurels because Puerto Rico in general sells so much rum to U.S. And Puerto Rico has kind of oversighted the huge market that Europe is. Europe has less population, but it has a lot of acquisitive power. There's a lot of, all the huge cities are cities that are super populated, and they have a lot of money to spend, and they like good stuff, and they don't care what they spend. And if it's
these darn Americans with their McDonald's and their Coca-Cola and stuff. Yeah, Europe is much better. I agree. Just having come back from there's a lot of good stuff over there. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, with the U.S. has such a huge population. It's 350 million people, and you have a segment that has the acquisitive power to, not everybody can pay $50 for a bottle of rum, or, so you'll grab the cheap stuff that's at the shelf. If I'm making minimum wage, well, that's what I can afford, and that's life. But I think that Puerto Rico has oversighted the potential of the European market and has all its egg in the U.S. market, because we're exporting everything that we produce, and we are we're not we're incentivized by the local government to sell toward the U.S. for obvious reasons. And I think that you can have all your eggs in the same basket. Right now, the Dominican rums are killing it in Spain and in all Europe. And all the great brands from the Dominican Republic are all over the place in Europe, and they're killing it there. And so, we're in the works of developing a market for Europe. I've been counseling the local rum of Puerto Rico company that directs the philosophy of marketing for Puerto Rican rums in the island, that we need to take a look at these guys over here, because the world is big, and everything has gone global. We can't stay focused in one geographic region only, because if things change in that region for all of a sudden, for whatever reason, then you're left out in the cold. So you need to have you need to have a few baskets around the world. Plan A.
Diversify. Yeah, yeah. I want to circle back to some of that, because you and I had an interesting conversation a few days ago. But one thing, before we get too far ahead of ourselves, you mentioned the molasses rum that you guys are doing, that you have in barrels, that you haven't released the product yet. It doesn't have a name. I want to talk a little bit about how you guys make rum at San Juan Artisan Distillers, because one of the things that really stood out to me the first time I met you and learned about the distillery was not only, we talked about all the efforts you're already doing, investing in growing sugarcane, everything like that, but you also brought in really smart people when you were getting started. I remember when we had Frank Ward on the podcast, who, formerly was part of Mount Gay. He's been doing consulting work for a little while, but he told us that he's very selective with his consulting work. He only likes to do consulting projects if it's a project that sounds interesting and fun to him. And he named your project specifically as one that he had recently done that was really interesting to him. I know you also brought in Luis Planas at one point for some consulting work, who had formerly been at Bacardi. So you brought in these really smart people. What was the process like of, you build a distillery, you have this sugar cane, but now you need to figure out, what is our rum going to taste like? There's so many different decisions you can make. I know you brought in your son, Jose, as the distiller. You guys were experimenting with all sorts of stuff. You have Frank Ward, you have Luis Planas. How long did that process take to arrive at your recipe, essentially, for rum? And what stood out to you about working with someone like Frank?
Well, Frank is a very dear friend. He came in as a consultant, and we're friends, and we talk. We send messages and all the time, and we have something going on that we need his help. He is always 100% willing. He's a phenomenal person. And he is one of the persons that knows more of rum in the whole world that I know. His experience is vast, is enormous, and he is a perfect gentleman as well. So when we built a distillery, as you mentioned, we had Luis Planas, who is, it could be Frank's counterpart in Puerto Rico. And Luis is a perfect gentleman as well. And Luis was consulting for us, and he was helping us to structure everything and guidelining us and showing us directions, because I had never done this before. I mean, I started in an industry that I knew nothing about it. When I started the project, and I decided to get into this in 2008, I created the started traveling and doing research, went to Martinique, saw the model in Martinique. I visited 10 distilleries there. And I said, this is what I want to do in Puerto Rico, because I want to produce something that is not going to be, bumping heads with what is being made already in Puerto Rico, and be one more distillery doing the same thing and trying to compete something against these huge industries. So my idea was to grow the sugarcane, and by coincidence, the distillery that I purchased that was in Trinidad, which was owned by Louis Vuitton Moët Hennessy, the Moët Hennessy group. They started
Tin
the
Cane.
Ten Cane Rum in Trinidad, and they were in the building of, what was the name of the brand? Will
Tin
the
Cane.
no, I mean the old rum that Velier sells, that they bought from, that was there in that same building in Trinidad.
Oh, Coroni, yes.
Which is a legendary rum. It's something, it wasn't successful. It was a business disaster. But nowadays, the bottle will cost you $3,000 or $4,000.
Yeah.
So this distillery, Louis Vuitton Moët Hennessy, came in and decided to revive, and in the same distillery, that historic building where Caroni was, and they built a brand new distillery, and they associated with Trinidad Distillers, and it didn't work for them because it didn't make sense. They were doing sugarcane agricole style rum or agricole rum, but they were filtering it so much that it tasted like what the American taste normal profile of a light rum tasted. So
Yeah, it didn't have as much of that cane, kind of fresh cane character in it.
Right.
That was completely eliminated because it's a very difficult market flavor. It's a very difficult flavored market. Very difficult. It's not for the mass. It
seems like a bad strategy, right? They're like, yeah, we're going to do something completely different. And then at the last moment, they're like, wait, we need to make this taste like everything else.
Yeah.
So the project then was not successful according to them. And they decided to sell the plant. And as I was building this here, I was offered, listen, would you like to come and see these equipment? We want to get rid of this stuff. So I flew over there, I bought the whole thing, and I brought it over. So and
you already had that Holstein still at that point, didn't you?
Yeah. So I thought that I would. I visited St. George Distillery in Alameda. They were super kind, and they're such good people. They showed me their whole distillery, and they have 5 or 6 Holstein style pot stills that they do different things there, and it's such a fantastic operation. And that was the model that I was about to recreate. I was going to install 3, 4, or 5 pot stills of the German modern technology of distilling, which you do double distillation in 8 hours. But then the distillery in France, the opportunity in Trinidad, the French distillery, the opportunity fell on my hand. I said, this is even more wonderful. I mean, to be able to buy these 3 cognac pot stills made in cognac and champagne, and distill fermented sugarcane juice from my farm in a French cognac pot still. There's, as I mentioned earlier, I think there's one distillery that does it in Marigalan. I don't think anyone in the States right now has a setup of distilling sugarcane juice in French cognac pot stills, the Charentais style pot still. So it's a ultra unique profile. It's something that's really, really fantastic, and it's quite unique.
As far as your molasses rum goes, do you guys approach how you ferment and distill that differently than how you do the Rum Pepon rum, or is it essentially the same process?
We distill 3-4 days, sometimes 5 days, and we just let it sit there, and then it goes through the process of distillation. It takes us almost 8 hours to distill in we call our dirty pot still, which is the pot still where you distill the fermented juice. Then we extract that at about 35% alcohol, and we store that. And just to give you an idea, yesterday we were calculating how much, sugarcane and how many batches of fermented juice we have to distill to create one batch. We get around 300 liters of alcohol at 35% in one batch of distillation of 2,000 to 2,500 liters of sugarcane juice.
Wow.
So then we have to add 1,500 liters minimum to our 2,500 liter pot still. So you're talking that we need 5 distillations, 5 days of milling sugarcane, 5 days of fermentation, almost a month of cutting sugarcane to process that, to then distill the 5 batches of the 35% alcohol and raise it up to 1,500 liters in our finishing pot still, which only redistills. It has never been touched by juice, so it's in a very clean. It's always in a very clean septic state, and we basically get maybe 400 liters. So you're looking at a month's work,
Right.
to get 400 liters of rum. So at 70% alcohol, which it is a lot of work.
And you mentioned alcohol there in terms of the ABV, and I wanted to talk a little bit about that too in terms of the bottling ABV that you've chosen. So you've already got all of these things going for you, at least for rum geeks like us, right? Pot still, check. Cane juice, check. No additives, check. And now you're saying, well, we're also going to go higher than 40% ABV. Your white rum is, I believe it's 45% ABV bottling strength, and then 43 for the añejo for the rum pepon. So I wanted to ask you a little bit about what thought went into that, how you arrived at those numbers, and how that all worked out with what you were just talking about.
Well, it does cost us more money to make them higher ABV. As a matter of fact, we raised the percentage of rum pepon añejo to 45% because Jose Roberto, my son, who is in charge of, he runs the distillery. Basically, he runs everything, and I don't interfere in that part. I'm just, you know.
Would Jose say the same thing? Would he say, "Yeah, my dad never interferes"?
But he wouldn't. He knows I'm always I'm always around and asking questions. But and I make pointers, but I do my very best. That he's doing a wonderful job, and
Yeah.
and he loves what he does, and he recommended that we go 45%, and I didn't really understand why, because I felt 43% for both products was a nice niche. As you know, most Agricola rums are bottled at 50%. They have a high alcohol content. So that was fine to go 45. And then rum pepon añejo, right now we're bottling at 45. And you can definitely feel stronger aroma, more concentrated. The aging process is more vivid, is more present than at 43, tiny bit. But the trend of the market is, as you've seen, everybody is bottling even rums at barrel strength. I'm 66 years old. If I take a sip of a 65% alcohol shot, it's going to burn my throat. I want to. And so maybe the younger generations have fresher throats or esophagus.
They're not as seasoned. Yeah.
It's really strong, but it's the trend, and it's what the bartenders like, and it's what the rum geeks are liking more and more each day. So we are looking at probably launching single barrels that we've selected, like a very special expression, and bottle them at probably barrel strength and come out with something like that, or maybe 55% alcohol or 56. We're also looking at some of the Agricola rum that we have aging. We're also, since I was in Spain recently, I contacted a supplier in Jerez to buy some cherry olorosos or some cherry barrels to do maybe a very small batch of an expression that will have a second 6 months barreling in a oloroso cherry cask, and maybe do something with cognac barrels with limousine wood from France, and maybe do a finishing on that, and maybe do another one with some other wood. We've been seeing the amburana wood from Brazil. The Japanese are using a lot, and it gives it this spicy, incredible profile and taste, and it's very rare. We don't want to completely repeat everything that people have been doing for the past years. We want to come in with a different proposal and some new angle and do something different, as we always have had.
Yeah, one of the things I wanted to ask you about is, you've been able to take this rum around the world, get in front of rum enthusiasts, see their reactions to it. We've also touched on how different what you do is from what people think of as Puerto Rican rum. And there are so many people in Puerto Rico who have been part of the rum industry in some capacity. You were talking about how you had Luis come and consult, but there's lots of people who, have worked for some of the bigger producers and their lives have been in rum. When people like that come to the distillery, What kind of like reactions have you seen from people who are a part of the Puerto Rican rum industry when they see someone making, okay, instead of molasses, we're going to do fresh sugar cane juice. Instead of column stills, we're going to do pot stills. Is there a positive reaction to that? What does it look like?
The reactions have always been amazing, from all the way up to the most well-known lifelong distillers of Puerto Rico. They have always, when they've had contact with me, they have always said that they admire the effort that we're doing and what we're doing, because it's something that they always had personally in the back of their minds, that someday they would be able to have their own a place similar to this, and that they could produce their own, because they have such enormous knowledge and a wealth of knowledge of producing rum, that they kind of identify themselves with what we're doing. And they simply give us a hug, and they say, "You guys are great," and we admire where you're, and I'm like, I'm just a rookie, I mean, I've been at 12 years. But they recognize and appreciate, and the camaraderie is incredible. We have received enormous support from both Serrayes and Bacardi when we've had big bumps in the road, that with the struggles with the hurricanes, and we fall into a crisis all of a sudden. They have been always, I mean, everyone in of the management of Bacardi, including their main distiller, they have always been open arms to assist us and help us in any way that we can. And Serrayes has been exactly the same. They have been, incredible. And with Planas, I still talk with Luis. Every time I have a doubt or something, I call Luis. Luis will take a call from anyone, and he will advise, and he feels that he's obliged to pass his life knowledge to others and younger generations and newer initiatives. And it's really great. Here, we ran into a problem that most of our consultants and most of the people, aside from Frank Ward, which had his pot stills and knew perfectly how to distill in pot stills, but in Puerto Rico, no one had distilled in pot stills ever. So we have 3 cognac pot stills sitting here. Okay, how do we do this? And with Frank, we helped a lot, but we had to, source also additional help. We brought in a cognac distiller, a very good friend. And from cognac, his dad had 28 of these pot stills, and he grew up running with his business with his dad.
Wow.
He's running an operation doing pisco in Peru. And we were going
cool.
as our head distiller, and the hurricane simply wiped our plans away, and he skipped and went to Peru and lives there happily. He has a wife, and he's staying there. But he came here, spent about 2 weeks with us, and he said, "Guys, this is the way to use these things." So we really did, we did have 3-4 solid pot still consultants that came over, and everyone gave us our version. Everybody gave us their report. We documented everything. And then we went ahead and did things as we thought were out of all the opinions, we'd make our own opinion on how to go and how to proceed, and create our own profile and create our own thing.
I wanted to go back a little bit. Something that we've talked about on other episodes of the podcast that comes up a lot in rum conversations is the rum cover over in Puerto Rico, which essentially, like I've mentioned this on the show before, but just at a very high level of what that is, just a quick review. It's basically excise taxes on Puerto Rican rum sold in the U.S. are returned to Puerto Rico. It's a similar relationship with the U.S. Virgin Islands as well. And then some of that money can then go back to distilleries as subsidies as well. So Puerto Rico can kind of choose how they, want to give that out. We've talked before about some of the benefits that can have for the Puerto Rican rum industry, but I think it's typically discussed through the lens of how it benefits sort of the big producers in Puerto Rico. So I wanted to kind of get the small producer, the craft distillery perspective, because I know you're there in Puerto Rico. There are other smaller craft producers on there, some of whom we've talked to before. What does that have a similar impact on you guys? How do you see, a lot of funds from the rum cover over coming to you as well? And how do you kind of manage that?
Well, as you know, the rum tax rebate program was implemented in 1917 when, during the Foraker Act passed by Congress, it would automatically give Puerto Ricans U.S. citizenship. And
Right.
Ricans were given U.S. citizenship so they could be sent to the First World War, and that is the main reason we were given citizenship. Uh, we were a territory that, we were a very poor little island in the middle of the Caribbean, a paradise, a beautiful place, great, amazing people. Because Puerto Ricans have, we live in such a privileged place in the world, such a beautiful place that, we're simply in awe of our land and our island and our beaches and everything that is Puerto Rico, represents Puerto Rico. The tax cover over was extended back then in order to give Puerto Rico an incentive to produce more sugarcane, to develop the sugarcane industry, to keep developing other products that are derived from sugarcane. But that kept growing and growing and growing. The sugarcane industry flourished. And once the sugarcane industry collapses, some of the big families that were producing sugarcane mainly switched to, okay, well, let's make rum then. We have all this sugarcane. And I'm sure they had been making rum for 100 years. So they had always been tinkering and maybe having a small production. And little by little, it started entering the U.S. and it started gaining traction. And so the U.S. decides it's basically an incentive that was created to help develop. And this is the way it's described in the law. It's created to help develop a third world island, which is Puerto Rico at that moment, and to incentivize the economy. So it was one of the first incentive programs that were created to help lift quality of life in Puerto Rico and modernize Puerto Rico and develop industry in Puerto Rico. That has been going back and forth since then, and our larger producers, they, definitely take a very large share of the monies that are returned to Puerto Rico yearly. And I think that they are completely entitled to it because they're the ones who are producing it, and God bless them. And I think they're completely 100% entitled to receive the money they receive. I also feel that the craft industry, Puerto Rico has developed 10 small, medium-sized distilleries like mine. And I mean, I feel that the Puerto Rican government, I think, has progressed a lot, and I think it has evolved. I've been here for 3 different administrations of 3 terms of governor, and I've seen how the mentality has kept evolving progressively in support of the craft distilleries. Yet there is a long way to go. We do not receive, I feel we do not receive a fair share in incentives. And I think the Puerto Rican government is being a little bit nearsighted and not promoting maybe new players that can evolve from a craft distillery, grow into a medium-sized distillery, and eventually turn into a large distillery and generate income for Puerto Rico and create jobs. Puerto Rico is the rum capital of the world. We produce huge amounts of high quality, regulated, wonderful rums, because our large houses produce amazing rums as well. And I am an admirer and a fan of the 2 large houses that exist in Puerto Rico, the 3 large houses or 4. And they've been working at this for 100 years. And so we have some time to catch up. But little by little, we're heading that way. Anyway, I feel that the Puerto Rican government although there has been progress, I think that it's being a little bit nearsighted, as I mentioned before, in not promoting an alternative. What I am doing, what I am producing, has nothing to do in the ballpark of the large manufacturers in Puerto Rico. This is a completely new proposal. This is a completely different product. Every single thing that I make in this distillery, there is nothing like it amongst the other brands. So I feel that it is a work in progress. Puerto Rican craft distilleries need to get united. We need to create a chapter of Puerto Rican distilleries, and we need to unite in force, and we need to go to our senators and our legislators and our governor and our directors of different agencies that are related to our industry, and have them see the importance that you need to have like a nursery where you're having, it's a little nursery where you have 10 distilleries that are trying to grow and they're
An
struggling.
incubator.
It's an incubator of businesses basically, but you need to give them factual help. I mean, and that is a struggle. It is an absolute struggle. We are taxed. The small distilleries are taxed much more than the large distilleries, and in our finished product, which is completely unjust. And I've been carrying the torch, complaining about this and trying to have this revised. How is it possible when you compare the American craft distilleries are taxed $2.25 per absolute gallon of alcohol? That is alcohol at 90%. Like they're paying like a couple of bucks per case. And they're protected. And the U.S. Senate and Congress, I know they have gone through huge struggles, and it's been a strong fight as well to be able to achieve all these goals. And they're doing great against all opposition. But it keeps being, it is in place right now. So they're being incentivized, and you've seen some craft distilleries in the States that have grown, exponentially enormous. Mm-hmm. And the island in Puerto Rico, we need to follow that example. We need to make justice to people. We have a distillery in the island of Vieques, Crab Island. And
Crab Island.
they make a fantastic product, and they're great people. But these guys are in Vieques, for God's sake. You need to throw these guys a rope and give them a hand. And they need to take everything to Vieques. They do everything in Vieques, and then they need to bring it over here. So, we're carrying our own torch, trying to maintain and develop our Agricola style rum, which we've gotten hit in back and forth with all these things that have occurred in the last 10 years. It hasn't been the best period of Puerto Rico or the best timing for me. But we're persevering. I mean, my son Jose is 33 years old. He has his whole life ahead of him. So we keep seeing this as a mission to eventually be able to market our products and grow and progress and improve the quality of our products. We're seeking to that all the time. We do not compromise anything here. Everything has to be perfect, and everything has to be top quality or it won't go out the door. But going back to the tax rebate, I feel that the distilleries are entitled, or should be entitled, and there should be a review of what craft distilleries receive. We don't receive anything, I mean, compared to what is received on the other side. And it's a struggle. I mean, Rums of Puerto Rico does help us and does promote events and does promote assistance throughout the years. They have assisted, and they have a great team of people working, but their hands are tied. They do not make the policy. They do not write the policy. The policy is handed to them of what they can do and what they cannot do. And they also have a limited budget. So if they don't have the money to help us, they can't help us. But I feel that craft distilleries should be granted part of the tax rebate that Puerto Rico receives, just as an investment for the future and as investment to guarantee that these guys won't disappear. Because distilleries could easily disappear. If you're in a business for 10, 12, 15 years and you're not really making money, and It's not happening because you're competing against industry that receives all these benefits. And on the other hand, the small distilleries that are struggling to survive are not receiving, anywhere near
Yeah.
what the benefits that the large distilleries receive, which I feel they're completely entitled. And I admire those companies, and those families are brilliant, and what they've built is simply awesome. But I think that the government has to exercise some recognition that it's worth looking at all these initiatives. We have 10 small distilleries in the island, and mine, which is, this is a 15,000 square foot distillery. It's not a garage.
Yeah.
A house. This is, we have a 3 ton per hour milling sugarcane mill, which is small for industrial standards of producing sugar. But, we can mill 30, 40 tons a day easily, and we could work 2 shifts and mill 100 tons. And we have, our 4 pot stills, and we have the tools, and we have the place. It's simply that this definitely should be revised. The tax code the taxes that we pay are maybe double or triple at the end of the day than what our peers in the U.S. pay. So
Because you're still paying the full, what is it, like $12 per proof gallon? Is that right?
yeah, no, we're paying $12 per finished product in the box. So
Okay.
Means we're paying like from $24 to $36 a case of taxes, which is what they tax vodka that comes from France, or gin from Spain, or wines from Europe. Going back a little bit, there was a law enacted in 2012 that revised the tax code for craft distilleries in Puerto Rico. And it was a perfectly rounded project that said that craft distilleries would pay 50% of the regular rate, which is $12.50 per finished product in a box, not proof gallon, which
Gotcha.
is the way it's done in the U.S., which is the way it should be done. So the law was amended in in the last session of the approval of the law, and it has a clause that was inserted that stipulates that if a craft distillery bottles anything that is over 40% alcohol, will pay the full tax for that product. I mean,
so just to review, there was a law that reduced this by 50%, but then they decided you only get the 50% discount if you're bottling something that is under 40% ABV, which is basically the minimum to actually make something that would be rum, right?
Yeah, the minimum to make something that you can call rum by the federal government and by Rums of Puerto Rico has to have 40% alcohol and has to be made from sugarcane juice. TTB,
Yeah.
the federal government will not allow you to call it rum if it has less than 40% alcohol. Puerto Rico is developing a project, the law to incentivize giving tax benefits to bring into the fold craft distilleries. And their idea was really to bring in all the big moonshiners that are hiding in the mountains, that the underground moonshine.
Pitorro makers.
Yeah.
Pitorro makers they wanted to bring them to the legal fold. But when they inserted this clause, Pitorro in the mountains is distilled and is bottled at 50%. So not a single one came into the fold. So they said, if I make a Pitorro of 39% alcohol, nobody's going to buy it. This is not the real that I make. So it was just a measure to protect the industry. And it's basically a death sentence for small distilleries. And I
spoke to another distiller who had another, Puerto Rican distiller who had a product that was being bottled at 39% ABV, and it was essentially an unaged rum, or a white rum. It might have been filtered, and it was 39% ABV, and there wasn't anything added to it, but it said on the bottle, it said rum with natural flavors. And I was like, what are the flavors? and the distiller tells me, well, there's nothing in there, but because I bottled it at 39% ABV, I have to put that it's flavored, in order to have rum on there in some way. But I did this because if I make it 1% higher, I pay double the taxes on it, basically. Wow. So, yeah, it's tough.
It is really tough. We try to keep things that simple, and we live with the laws that we live. And my life goal is to try to help and amend these things that are not right, that are happening. And with the TTB, I suggest this all the time. Every time, they are very nice. Local office of the TTB in Puerto Rico are incredible. They're super helpful, and they have always, they have always been the same as the Puerto Rican government. They have always outstretched their hands. But there are these little, when you look and when you read the fine lines, everybody wants to help, but then you have this little line down here that is killing you. And if that isn't revised, and you've seen how many craft distilleries are shutting down in the U.S. right now, every week.
Yeah, it happens all the time.
Every week there's 3 or 4 craft distilleries and craft beer breweries being auctioned. Plants that have 5-6 years old, they they go forward, they do their project. If they're working in something for 5, 6, 8 years and they're not making money, they simply liquidate it. Let's do something else and let's move on. So, we don't have plans at all of shutting down, but, it might get to a point when I'm not here any longer, and that Jose Roberto might say, you know what, this is not worth it. Keep struggling with this. We need to play in a level playing field that, isn't, a very steep hill for the upcoming small businesses to try to reach the plateau where the others sit.
Well, and the correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the perception that your distillery in particular is benefiting from the cover-over tax tremendously, that's kind of kept you at an arm's length from some of the Caribbean associations like WIRSPA as well, right? Because, if you're into rum, that, or if you just look at it objectively, right? You have all these other Caribbean nations making rum. They have a collective industry or a collective organization to help the rum industry. If there's one island that has this huge advantage in the U.S. marketplace, that organization is probably not going to be a huge fan of that policy, right? Because it puts some of their producers at a disadvantage in the U.S. marketplace. They're working with tighter margins essentially, but the perception is kind of that that's your distillery too, and you're saying that's not really the case.
Yeah, I remember Jose Roberto went to El Aleman. The Aleman yeast makes this amazing composium.
Alcohol school.
The alcohol school in different parts of the world. And Jose participated in one in Quebec. And there was a special rate for WIRSPA members that would get a discount if they participated. And we asked the organization that runs the alcohol school, listen, we're Puerto Rico, we're Caribbean, we're from the Caribbean, we're Puerto Ricans, we're part of the Caribbean. Can we benefit from the same discount? And they said, no, you have to be a member of WIRSPA to receive that discount, that special rate. And then I wrote to WIRSPA and I said, can I belong to WIRSPA? I'm willing to, pay the dues and pay everything and be. Puerto Rico is part of the United States. It's part of the Caribbean. It's part of it's the territory of the U.S., but it's an island. It's an island country. Puerto Rico has its own identity than any other part of the U.S. And we've been part of the U.S. now for 125 years. And before that, we were a colony of Spain for 500 years. And before that, we had Taino Indians roaming around before Columbus arrived. So we have our own identity, and it's a melting pot of these 3 amazing cultures. We come from the African, the Indian, and the white Europeans that colonized Puerto Rico, and that is what Puerto Ricans are. And I was told by WIRSPA I couldn't belong to their group because Puerto Rico was part of the tax rebate program, and that simply Puerto Rico was not allowed to participate. And that was a unanimous decision of every single country in the Caribbean that we couldn't be part of WISPA. And my argument was that, listen, but I don't receive a single cent of tax rebate. Why should I be penalized? Why can't I be part of your movement and benefit of educational programs that you participate, symposiums at trade fairs that you guys participate? Why can't the small craft distilleries in Puerto Rico that don't receive this tax rebate not be able to be part of WISPA, which I honestly, it was kind of hurtful. And it seems to me it's discriminative. There is discrimination just because Puerto Rico, which is a territory of the U.S., receives these benefits from the U.S. My message to them was, what would the British Caribbean islands do if Great Britain or England would be sending you a tax rebate of all the taxes they collected, and they would send that money to you to help your economy and help you go forward and help you, help your industry progress? Would you refuse that? Why should we refuse? Why should the houses in Puerto Rico that receive those benefits refuse that, and disqualify them from being part of the Caribbean Rums Distiller Association? And the French islands the same. The French islands, everybody knows that distilleries in the French islands are highly incentivized by the French government. It's exactly the same thing.
Yeah, well, I know this is kind of complex territory for the Rumcast, but it's, the cover over it is such a big part of shaping the way the rum market looks like. And I think a lot of times people view it from kind of a narrow lens, but there's more to the issue than meets the eye, I think, and the way it plays out in what's really like a rapidly changing rum landscape on Puerto Rico itself.
Right.
The way it plays out there, as you were just speaking to, is there's more than meets the eye there. And, it's really interesting because as a rum enthusiast, seeing the diversity of all the new craft distilleries in Puerto Rico, it's really exciting. And, you mentioned Crab Island on Via Case. I've spoken to Yvonne from there. He has a great story, super passionate. I've talked to the Coquille folks out in Mayaguez, completely different part of the island. Again, super passionate. If you go up to Jayuya, there's a distillery there in the middle of the island in the mountains. Very passionate people. And it's really kind of a cool way to get to know different parts of the island and of the culture. And behind each of them are these very interesting expressions of rum that are very different. And so it's almost like, if you have an organization to promote Puerto Rican rum, like you're sitting on kind of, from the rum enthusiast perspective, you're sitting on gold with all of these extremely interesting producers that you could be getting out there promoting to the world. So I hope we do see more of that. But to kind of bring everything back home, you've got the molasses rums that are aged 4 to 6 years now. You're working on a product name for that. So that'll be interesting to see. What else, what should people keep an eye out from? What should we expect to see in, the next couple of years from you guys?
Well, we're launching a counterpart to our Ron Santo rum, the 3-year-old aged blend of pot still and column. We're calling it El Rubio, the blonde in Spanish, El Rubio, because we're not going to charcoal filter our rum that is aged for a year. So we're launching El Rubio, which will be a 1-year-old white rum that is going to be extremely flavorful and it's going to be wonderful. And it has kind of very light yellowish color because the barrel does impart some color to it. So that's coming out with Ron Santo. And we're reaching the age that we were waiting to start launching single barrel batches. We're going to be launching 100% French cognac pot stills or Chavignac cognac pot stills. 100% of that product bottled, and it's completely different. Right now we do Rompepon as it is. It has a is a blend of a large percentage of the cognac pot still. And it does have a little bit of the lighter Arnold Holstein pot still, which is also, it produces a lighter rum. So we age both rums that we distill separately, and then we play with the balances. We're
Nice.
launching some of the Holstein rum as a pure identity on itself as it comes out of the Holstein, which you get the vapors of the alcohol in the pot, and then it goes into the rectifying column, and then you get a
Right. It's like a hybrid still.
yeah, it's a hybrid still, and you get a finished product in one day, and it's a lighter product. So we're launching we're launching a brand that rum on itself, and we're launching the 100% pot still, which we tried the other day, and it knocked our socks off. And also we're launching Tres Clavos, the Ronsanto rum. Well, I tried yesterday, as I mentioned, the 4 to 5 year old product, and that will be coming out. So Don Santo will have 3 or 4 different expressions, including the single barrels and the single pot still, cognac pot still, which is a completely different profile. And we will keep always doing the actual rompepon. It's just going to have a variation on the label, and we're going to start being more niche specific, going after the rum lovers market, people who are always looking out to try something different, a new expression. So we're very, very excited that we're going to be launching this. And last night, after I tried these rums that we were trying yesterday for the first time, last night I felt that we've been so blessed, and God has been so great with us, because we've basically walked into a dark room without knowing where we were going, and we have been illuminated by a lot of good people in Puerto Rico, and friends like Frank and other people from other friends from other parts of the world. But it's amazing that we stumbled into these barrels, and that we selected these barrels, and they were recommended, as a matter of fact, by Luis, and he said, this is what you want to get. And the barrels are so amazing, and the product that is coming out now is so incredible that it really, we feel really blessed that things have gone that way, because things can go south easily if you don't do things right. But what we have right now in store, I am super excited when we launch all these products. It's going to knock your socks off. And also, this is the one thing that really makes us viable and competitive and gives us the opportunity to survive, is that what we're creating is a very small batch, handcrafted rum made with absolute love and passion. And what the result of what we're bottling straight from the barrel. It just goes through a filter. We just reduce the alcohol level percentage with very, very clean water. And once when you try the quality of the product, we don't have a commitment to sell 20 million cases or 10 million cases or 1 million cases or 500,000 cases. We're making cases. So the nectar that is going in there is is the nectar.
Well, speaking of going into a dark room and not knowing where we're going, I have a new segment, Pepe, that I would like to see if you would be willing to try out with me. We're going from super serious and some of the stuff we just talked about a few minutes ago to super silly here. So we'll just see where this goes. But Pepe, if you're willing, what I have here is just a couple of minutes we can spend talking a little bit about something. I'm going to ask you to rate some cocktail recipes and the names that I've come up with for some San Juan Artisan Distillers type of things. Now, there's one thing you have to know going into this, Pepe, is that I am not a mixologist in any way, shape, or form. So these are clearly just coming up with, starting with maybe a name, and then going back and trying to figure something out that might work with that. So what I want you to do is you're going to give me a rating. I'm going to give you a recipe and a name, and you're going to tell me a 10 sounds like amazing, give me one right now. A 5 is like, whatever, take it or leave it. and a 1 is like, John, I'm actually more depressed now for having heard you speak this and don't ever want to hear about it again. All right? What do we think?
Absolutely, sir.
All right. Sorry. Here we're going to go. Let's just
This
go
is a
with
new
this.
experience for me too, by the way. I didn't know this was coming, so I'm really excited to see where this goes.
That sounds good.
All right. So let's see. The first.
No, I'm having great fun. I mean, this is what I enjoy most with you guys. And I mean, we've touched some serious issues and we've analyzed the industry. We've analyzed the craft distillery movement in Puerto Rico, the general situation of Puerto Rico, what we need to do to improve and evolve and progress and let the industry grow. So I think it's a great moment to lighten up a little bit.
That's right. Let's balance it out. Okay, so here we go. Here's my first one. I've got a few of these, okay? This is going to be Ron Pepon. We take Ron Pepon, the aged añejo, okay? We put in with Red Bull on the rocks in a Tom Collins glass, and we call it Some Pep in Your Step.
Oh, my goodness. I'm sorry. Not a fan.
Don't be sorry. We need your honest opinion here. So
Yeah.
are we going with is this like a 3, a 1, a 2?
And I would say that 50% of the population might like it. 50% of the population like it more as a more natural thing instead of a high energy drink. So I have never even thought of that. Honestly, you caught me off guard. So I couldn't say maybe.
So you're definitely not one of the 50%.
I'm gonna say it's like a 2. Like
It sounds like a 2.
Mixing Red Bull with Ron Pepon Añejo just feels like a crime to me. So yeah, let's get that out of here.
That's a pretty good name, especially
Some
Pep in Your Step. Like, it makes sense.
You started with the name, and then that's the trouble you can run into with starting with the name.
Oh, these are all going to be trouble, Will. All of them. Okay, next one, Pepe. It's taking some Tres Clavos, the piña, the sweet piña, right? And we're going to put in some absinthe and some lime juice. We're going to shake this and strain it into a coupe, and we call it 3 Nails in the Coffin.
I think it sounds amazing. I don't the coffin part. It kind of, I would change it to maybe to heaven.
Okay.
A little more positive connotation, yeah.
We'll do a version with Malort, and that will be the coffin, and absinthe or something can be heaven. I gotcha. Okay.
I think that would work fantastic. I would give that a 10.
Wow. Will,
All
we've
right.
got a 10.
You're bouncing back. You're bouncing back. See if
All
you
right.
can bring it home. I think you got one more of these.
All right. Oh, man, I've got so many more, but we're just going to do one more here. All right. This is a play on maybe a gray ghost. So we're taking Ron Pepon white rum, creme de violette, blue curacao, maraschino, and lemon juice served up. And we call this one, pardon me, do you have any gray Pepon?
Sounds fantastic as well. I love that as well. Popular drink we make with Ron Pepon is lime daquiri, a key lime daquiri, which is the Ron Pepon has the perfect balance for that drink. I have never tried a lime daiquiri that has the notes of the funkiness and the sugarcane flavor that comes through the daiquiri. And this is very similar. I tried a daiquiri like that. They had it added the maraschino liquor, I think it's called. It's a very small company in northern Italy that they make the best cherry extract in the world. And it's actually, it sounds similar to that. I tried that in Positano in one of my travels and a bar I visited. And it was amazing. And that sounds amazing. I like that a lot.
You see? Look, I'm winning with this, Will. All right. I do have one last one, Will. I know you said we should stick to it.
All right. We'll let you have one more.
I promised my wife with this one. Okay. So, because I had to get her help with it. So, how about this one, Pepe? And you have so many of the different flavors of Tres Clavos out there, which I've had the pleasure of trying many of them, and they're all very good. So what if you've bought all of these, you have them in your home bar, and you throw every Tres Clavos flavor you have together into a punch bowl and put maybe some 151 or some Ron Pepon or whatever else you might have in there. You add some ice, and you serve it, and we call it Pal Carajo.
Anda, that sounds great.
Which is basically to heck with it, right?
I think that's amazing. You add a little bit of juice, and you have, the most magnificent, rum punch you could ever concussions. I think that would be fantastic. I like that idea as well. I think that's fantastic.
I'm an idea machine, Will.
That's a better name too, because when you talk about combining all the flavors, it makes me think of being a kid and going up to the soda machine, and you put a little bit of everything, and we called that a suicide when I was a kid.
Go.
So we don't want that name for this drink. So I think your name was much better, John.
All right. Well, thank you, Pepe. What a good sport you are to go through those.
Thank you for humoring us. And I know we've kept you a couple of hours. I know you're a busy man. You've got tons of things going on at the distillery, all the projects you just mentioned, and on top of that, working on this new sugarcane field as well, and automating everything. Before we wrap up, is there anything that you wanted to let people know about? Anything we didn't cover before we go?
Well, first of all, I want to thank you again. Your invitation to be able to do,
of course,
every couple of years. It's always an honor to be on your podcast, and it's been amazing sharing time with the two of you. And that Puerto Rico, we're here, open arms, and our casa es tu casa. So if you guys ever want to come down, you'll be received here in Puerto Rico, not only by us, but by everyone with open arms. And basically, our intention is to grow the distillery, where at the moment I'm also open. We need to invest in the distillery, a substantial amount of money, possibly a couple of $1 million, to reach our new goals and our new plans. And we are open to, if there's any companies out there, distilleries, people related to the industry that might be interested in approaching us. We want to make partnerships and with different ways. And we're open to ideas. And I feel that you need to have alliances and to be able to progress and shorten the time of growth. If you connect to the right people, that will accelerate the progress of a company. And we see this happening all the time. So we're open to alliances with distilleries, the investors that might be interested in having part of participation in a small distillery in Puerto Rico. So anyway, I really appreciate the time you guys have given me, and
of course,
and I think that everything that we have spoken has come out from my heart, and I'm calling it as I see it. I might be maybe too direct sometimes, but the truth is the truth. And we're going to continue doing this because this is what we love to do, and my son loves what he does. And the crew and the staff that we have here in this distillery everyone is amazing, and we get so much support from the local bar scene in Puerto Rico, the restaurants, and all the people that support us. And we get calls from the U.S. I would say on a weekly basis, we get 10 messages. Where can I buy Tres Clavos? In New York? Where can I buy Tres Clavos in Texas? Where can I buy Tres Clavos in Chicago? Where can I buy it
in Miami? Where can I buy it in Miami? Another important message is that, we're looking for discerners. We're looking to hook up with good people that know what we're doing. And
someone please bring this to the mainland US. We would all appreciate it.
Seriously.
If you're listening, get in touch with Pepe. Yeah. And also, if you're listening and you are planning to go to Puerto Rico, I highly recommend going and visiting San Juan Artisan Distillers. It's a really cool setting, really peaceful out there, a little bit outside the city, kind of. You got the beautiful sugarcane fields, all kinds of rum to try. It's a great experience, so go do that. But Pepe, thanks again for coming on. We really appreciate it, and it's been great catching up.
Thank you. Our webpage is sanjuanartisandistillers.com. All the information there, sanjuanartisandistillers.com, and all our information is there. Thank you so much.
Yep. Cheers, Pepe.
Cheers.
Bye. Take care.
All right, everyone. Thanks so much for listening to another episode of the Rumcast. If you'd like to learn more about San Juan Artisan Distillers, we'll put a link up to their website in the show notes. You can check out some of that stuff there. Also, if you'd like to get more Rumcast, you can find us at patreon.com/the Rumcast. We're doing bonus episodes, happy hours, all kinds of good stuff. We're actually about to record a bonus episode right after this with our thoughts on the new high ester blend from El Dorado. So getting all kinds of stuff like that there on the Patreon side of the Rumcast. So check that out if you'd like to get more Rumcast, support the show. Also, we always love to hear from listeners. If you have questions, suggestions, anything like that, you can email us, host@rumcast.com. That's HOST@rumcast.com, or they can find us on social media. John, where can they find us?
Yeah, if you're a fan of the shorter format, go to social media at the Rumcast at Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram, and you can comment on one of our posts there, or hit us up on the DMs, and we'll reply to you then. If you want to tell us how terrible a floral daiquiri is and the idea of it, please feel free to reach out and let us know. So,
El Amparo daiquiris, it's going to be a thing. Go out there and order an El Amparo daiquiri. We're going to call it the John Gullah daiquiri before this is all over and said and done.
No, the Gullah daiquiri is already a thing, and that's using the Fiji and pineapple juice in the daiquiri. Remember? Come on.
I thought that was the
Gullah daiquiri.
I thought that was the Bulla daiquiri.
Yeah, but it's now the Gullah daiquiri. It's just close enough.
Okay, I wasn't informed that that you got that. I guess it makes sense. Yeah, it's like one or two letters off. I think I can't remember if there's one L or two in the original name.
It's basically the same thing. So it's already there. We may as well just make the leap there. So and by the way, look, I won't throw shade on just Will here. It's also me. If the segment that we did at the end of this with Pepe was absolutely the worst thing and worst idea we've ever come up with, let us know and tell us, hey, go back to the rapid fire, please, because that it is what it is. Just give us your honest feedback. That's all we're asking for. Talk to us. Let us know what's going on.
That's true. It's not like Pepe turned down the rapid fire. John threw this out as rapid fire replacement for this episode. So I don't know if the people are going to be amenable to that, John. So
I don't know either.
We might get some angry feedback.
If you don't evolve, you die, right? So I'm trying some new things. We're trying to, spice it up a little bit here. Put El Amparo in a daiquiri, same thing. We're gonna put that together in a different segment and see what happens. And sometimes you get floral daiquiris, and it is what it is.
All right, everyone, get out there, experiment with your daiquiris, and let us know what you end up with. We'd love to hear from you. Anyway, until next time, cheers.
Cheers.